Well, sisters and brothers, today I'd like to share with you something that will probably be not too popular in this world today. I dare say it might even be controversial. Are you ready? God is hierarchical. I might be even more so bold as to say that God is patriarchal. Now, many people hear that today and they're immediately ready to pick up the pitchforks. I think it goes without saying, and it's a bit of an understatement today to say that we are a nation divided. Bit of an understatement at this point. And in order to make my point, I'd like to use an image, one that I hope is common for many of you if you ever played sports. I played football. Now, I want you to imagine that you have a group of friends and you form a team, and you're going to play a game. But there, you decide, we want to do away with such old notions as a coach, referees, and we just want to make sure that we all make decisions together. How well do you think that will work out? Immediately, everyone begins to decide, okay, well, I want to be the quarterback. And so does half the other people. Nobody wants to be the center, least of all the kicker. And then when it comes time to play, how do you decide? Well, what play are we going to call? Are we going to take a vote each time as the seconds tick by? That's not going to work out too well, is it? You could see how almost immediately, when you take away authority and structure, and everything becomes a battle of wills, becomes an argument and a fight. Who will be in charge and who will not is no longer something that is derived from one's position, but through pure strength of will. Who can dominate? Whose voice can be the loudest? Who can gather the most people in their corner to be able to control how things will go? Sound familiar? Now, I think that the reason that people find such difficulty in understanding this is because we've lost the value of hierarchy and authority. And we've also lost an understanding of the virtue of obedience, or even what that means. For many people, they understand authority as merely power. You see, there is a big difference between authority and power. Authority comes from the virtue of one's position. And so long as they follow it and live into what it should be, then that authority works well. But when one deviates from the plan and starts to use their authority in ways that are abusive, well, now it's no longer authority, but it's power. The ability to be able to control and manipulate others. God is a God of authority. Now, think of our own experience. When we belong to a team, we have a good coach. A good coach, what does he do? He is in charge. That is absolutely true. But a good coach knows all the players. A good coach knows what you are good at and what your skills are, what you need to work on. A good coach knows how each person fits into the plan of the team and begins to make things work in concert with one another for a common goal and a common purpose. And the best coaches, the really good ones, delegate their authority. They begin to recognize the players that show leadership potential, the ones who seem to understand the field and understand the game, those who can also do what the coach does and speak words of encouragement to other players when they are down. A good coach notices these things, and he gives some of his authority and appoints someone captain. You see, so long as everyone understands that there is something beyond themselves, a unifying structure, and everyone is willing to give themselves over to it and not just hoard power for themselves, but then everyone begins to work in concert with one another, and we're all the better for it. But if the world is just divided into power, those who have it and those who have not, all we ever end up with is fighting. God is a God of authority, but God is one who sees his people, knows their gifts and their talents. And God chooses to delegate his authority. He recognizes that power is meant to be shared, that it's meant to be given over, that when people follow the one in charge and do so with a humble spirit, they're actually lifted up and things begin to work together. If we can no longer decide what are the rules of the game, you imagine, not only do we not have a coach, but we don't have refs, and people all of a sudden decide that we don't even want to play football anymore, and half the people are playing soccer, and the other half want to play baseball, and other people don't even know what football is anymore. Now what do we have? We have nothing. See, this is the unifying thread of what I've been saying so many times in these past few weeks. That God is the author of life. We are his creatures. And when we forget that, when we rebel against him, now everything devolves into a power struggle. Who's going to take his place? Who's going to decide what the rules are? Who's going to decide what's right and wrong? The one with the loudest voice? The one with the biggest army or the most wealth? Is that how we want to live? Or do we want to live as a people who understand that there is something beyond us holding us together? And not only that, but there are rules and there are structures to this life for a reason. Namely, that we have a goal, that we have a purpose, that if we work together, we can help one another achieving its end. And so we see in our readings today God delegating his authority. And we also see the consequences of forgetting that authority and seeking power instead. God chose Saul to be the very first king of the people. And for a time, it worked, and the people were unified, and the nation grew. But then Saul decided to go against the commandments of the one who gave him the authority in the first place. He sought to seek power for himself and no longer honor his great king in heaven. And how quickly things descended. Some people began to follow the young David, and other people following Saul, and the nation was divided. It was in its first civil war. Until eventually God rose up one who would be humble before the Lord. King David, who was full of his own faults and weaknesses for sure. But when he sinned, he recognized his grievance. He recognized what he had done, and he once again put his heart before the Lord. See, power only comes from legitimate authority, and God is the ultimate authority. And so long as we follow him, well, then that power is secure and it is peaceful. But when we turn away from him, then things begin to turn into conflict and to fight against each other. God's biggest woe, his biggest threat in all of the Bible is for woe to the shepherds who mislead the herd. Woe to those who have been given authority and use that for themselves and lead people away from it. But blessed are those who are humble of heart and follow me. Today we hear in the gospel, John the Baptist, famous, people coming from all different countries and different tongues. He was a man renowned in his time. And he had a lot of power. But the moment the Lord stood before him, what did he say? I am not worthy to even unloosen the thongs of your sandals. He was a man who recognized where his authority came from. Sisters and brothers, we do have a God who is King of the universe, but he is one who knows us, one who wants to call us forth and to give us life and wants us to work in concert with one another. Let us always be mindful of his words. Let us be a people who once again revive the spirit of obedience, who understand our position in this world, and seek always to follow the one who called us. Let us not be people always quarreling and fighting, seeking to dominate and have our will over others, but recognize the virtue of our positions and the incredible responsibility that comes from it. Let us come before this altar once more. Let us humble our hearts and pay honor to the one with true authority.